are live, and we're also on tape from beautiful downtown Kamloops. We are in the bowels of Lee's Music Studio 2. State of the art, beautiful in here. That's Chris Folds, I'm Marty Hastings, and this, of course, is Kamloops Last Week. I love our show today, Chris. We have a couple of Olympians, or one for sure who's going to the Olympics in Matt Berger, and one who we hope on Monday will get the news is going to the Olympics in Isaac Kaay. And we have Nathan Matthew as well.
We do have Nathan Matthew. He's the former chief of the Simpcw First Nation, and he will be speaking to us about his role as administrator of the Kamloops Indian Residential School after the federal government took it over in the early 70s. Also his perspective on where we go from now.
And of course, none of this is possible without our title sponsor. Holmes is where the heart is, personalized matchmaking.
This is a lock I gave one of my couples when they got married. Hi, I'm Tara Holmes from Holmes is where the heart is, Personalized Matchmaking Limited. If you are tired of the emotional roller coaster of online dating where people are getting ghosted, there's fake profiles, and your picture is on display for everyone to see, contact me for my discreet, private, customized service where I actually meet everybody first to make sure that they're a fit for you. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at HolmesHeartIs or HolmesIsWhereTheHeartIs.ca, and maybe one day we'll be locking in your love right here.
Chris, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've missed, because it kind of feels like we're coming into somewhat of a path to normalcy. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about a column that you recently wrote in today's paper. And you and I have pretty much agreed on most things so far on this show, but I think I disagree with you on your column's premise here. Do you want to explain what you wrote about today?
The premise of the column is the TNRD, the Thompson Regional District, has eyed a site for a third library, a third physical library in Kamloops. We need one. We have one in North Kamloops. We have one downtown, and the third one they hope to build across from Aberdeen Mall.
I just don't think we need a third library. And I think this is classic Foldsy here, living in this halcyon days dream world of the past that never existed in the past, and it's not going to exist in the future. You wrote about how your kids were gleefully running along the aisles and looking at books when in reality they were probably tugging on your pant leg and saying, "Daddy, let's get the hell out of here." I just don't see a need for it. Two's enough.
My kids, as young tykes, were learning the ways of the library, taking out books and stuff like that, while you in South Surrey were out probably breaking into cars. That is why a library is important, to keep the kids on the straight and narrow. No, really, the libraries are important because some people, we posted this story online and it's got a lot of response. A lot of people are against it. A lot of people are in favor of it. 40% of the population of the TNRD holds library cards. That's a lot. It's not as much as it was in 2004 when it was 93% pre-big internet days. But the 40% of the 40,000 people, which is 30% of the population that now have library cards, is 10,000 more than 5 years ago. So it's on an upswing. And the library is much more than just taking out books. It's about meeting, it's about tutoring, it's about teaching people, it's about getting shelter for people.
Some of that's good, but you paint this rosy picture. It's not this kumbaya place where everyone gathers and paints finger painting and does arts and crafts like that.
They do. Actually, they do.
But they
in
don't
fact, if you go into KamloopsThisWeek.com right now, in the community section, you'll see the library events for the summer, and it includes finger painting, tiny tots, golden agers, all sorts of stuff for all sorts of people, all through the summer.
And then you also make a really weird point about, well, everything on the internet's a conspiracy theory. Well, not everything you read in a book is fact either. And by the way, I did go to the library when I was a kid, and that was the 80s and the 90s when there was no internet. And now we have an internet, so you don't need to go to the library.
Again, fake news. I didn't say in my column everything on the internet's conspiracy theory. What I did say is when you go to the library, you're going to be rest assured that when you take a book off the shelf of reference, your neighbor down there didn't edit it and put in some conspiracy theory nonsense, which happens on the internet all the time.
Well, what about, there's probably some whack job librarians out there that are planting these books. Just because in a book doesn't mean it's a fact either.
Mr. Bookman would disagree.
Okay, so we had our first good argument there, and now we're going to switch gears and talk about some positive stuff, hopefully. What we've missed in the pandemic, what pops into mind for you?
Yes, this is an image from our front page on the one-year anniversary of the pandemic and all the restrictions. And this is a word cloud. We invited people to write in to say, what do you miss the most? And these words that jump out are what they miss the most. And it comes back to the basics: family, hugs, touching your children who are far away, and just connection. It's connection. And I think that's what we miss most, whether it's sitting in a pub with friends, going to a concert, going to a Blazers game. And there's people in Kamloops who haven't seen their relatives, their mums and their adult children who live on the coast for more than a year.
I know it's weighing on us. It's weighing on me. You and I, like if they filmed us in the parking lot 2 minutes ago, we wouldn't be able to play because we were just saying about how anxious and uptight, and I'm feeling a lot of anger for various reasons. Not all. My personal life's a disaster, but that's another thing. But I do miss my family. I miss my little niece Ada. I'm gonna shamelessly play a clip of her right now so you can see why. On the positive side, you know, we talk about sports a little bit here, and things look like that's a good gauge that we're getting back to normal. You look at the Lions, your favorite team, the August 6th start date.
Yep, August 6th in Saskatchewan. That's when they'll go 1-0 on an 14 and 16-0 season, and they're here next month on the 10th, and hopefully, I think we'll be able to go into the Hillside Stadium at some point to watch the training camp. Yeah.
I think we will, and then the Western Hockey League and the KIJHL eyeing the October 1st start date, and they hope to have, well, in the Western Hockey League, they hope to have a full barn. They're really pushing for that in their press release. So that, to me, is a sign, being a sports guy, that, hey, we can start getting back to normal. Tokyo, the Olympics, it sounds at this point like they're going to have no fans. Here in Kamloops, we could have as many as 6 Olympians and Paralympians going to Tokyo. Kelly Olynyk, Patrick Waters, Catherine Pendrell, Greg Stewart, Isaac Kaay, and Matt Berger. Now, Matt Berger, the Kamloops killer, 27 years old, he is going to be there. He qualified last week in Rome, and we had a good chat, and we're going to meet him in our next segment, which is the Tattle of Hastings. That's Matt Berger right there. He's a handsome guy. He's 27 years old, and he's going to the Olympics for sure. He was in Rome last week trying to qualify. He kind of left it to the last minute, although he was in good position heading in. He was 17th in world rankings heading into Rome. He had to finish in 16th to guarantee his place in the Olympics. In order to do that, he had to finish in the top 8 and get to the finals at the World Championships in Rome. And how he ended up doing that was pretty cool, and we talked about that in this interview right here.
Before I ask you about the Olympics, you posted a video on Instagram a few days ago, and I think it was in Rome. And normally when you guys land a trick, you kind of play it cool, but I think even you were like, man, that was something special, and you kind of looked at the crowd and did that heart. Was that something that was like, even you were kind of like, man, that was a special special trick?
Yeah, no, well, it was you know, no one actually saw it because it was in practice before, except for the crowd. But the practice, we had a 30-minute practice right before the semifinals began, and I messed up on a trick down the 10 rail, and I flew down the whole rail and landed on my back. And it honestly was one of the worst slams I've taken skating in years. It was so bad that I was like in shock and laying on the bottom of the stairs, like checking my body, like, okay, am I good? Is my back good? Am I all right? Did I hit my head? Like, I didn't know what happened in a sense, because it was just so bad and caught me off guard. And, you know, I got back up and walked off the course, and the crowd was clapping. And yeah, it was just, obviously it was hurting after something like that. You imagine flying, you know, down 10 stairs to your back. It's crazy because that has never happened to me. It was just kind of a freak thing. But yeah, it definitely affected my spirits for sure. And then I was like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm here in Rome. I got to get back on my board. And I stepped back on my board, and yeah, the crowd in Rome was just so stoked to see that I stepped back on my board after such a hard slam. And as soon as I stepped back on my board, like the crowd just started yelling, and they're super supportive. And then every little trick I did, they were just kind of cheering me on. And there was this kind of cool connection, I guess, that I've never really had in that sense, where I felt like the crowd's energy kind of brought me back to life, you know? And yeah, within about a 10-minute period after the slam, I was starting to feel better, and then the competition began. So it was a pretty quick turnaround before competing, you can say. And then, yeah, I ended up putting everything together. And then, yeah, that trick was the very last try I had. And if I didn't land it, I wouldn't have made the finals. And then, yeah, I just went for it and rolled away. And so it was this crazy sense of relief, but also like the crowd was just so psyched. And I just remember rolling away with this huge sense of relief, but also looking at the crowd like, you guys helped me with this, you know? It was this cool connection. I was under the impression that if I made the top 16, then I was good to go to the Olympics. And, you know, so semifinals was a really big day for a lot of people because of how much points you get based on how you placed at World Championships. Makes or breaks a lot of people's Olympics.
That trick then actually meant a lot. Like you getting into the finals on that trick that you had the last chance.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually pretty important too. That landing that trick.
No, like that like it was probably one of the most like life-changing tricks I've done in the contest. And I didn't even realize it at the time because I was just focused on my process and, you know, doing the tricks I had planned. But in hindsight and looking back on it, you know, that last try and that trick was really a big game changer for my Olympics. So
what was that called? I had zero clue about skateboarding.
No worries. that trick is called a kickflip backside tail slide big spin out.
Okay. That sounds like it's special.
It's funny because, you know, this has basically been like a 2-3 year process if you want to count the year of COVID because we didn't do anything.
I think you had a failed knee surgery in 2014.
Yeah.
Then you have this kind of experimental surgery in 2017, a cadaver implant. Yeah. Just having gone through all that, how much more rewarding is it to be where you are right now?
I mean, it's honestly absolutely unbelievable for me because, you know, there was a point where I was so defeated with coming back from, you know, my knee injuries that it wasn't even about trying to come back to skateboarding. I'd accepted that I might never be able to be a professional skateboarder and do it for a living anymore, but I wanted to just get my life back. And so to mentally be in those spaces and then to be able, you know, to have came back from that place, and in hindsight, it was overwhelming, especially at Rome after that, and just realizing like, hey, you did this, you're going to the Olympics, and then knowing the, like, you know, how dark it got really for me over those years. So yeah, it's kind of like hard to put into words, honestly.
So I got a few Kamloops questions for you. You grew up here, you're born and raised here. And I imagine you skated a ton with friends here and you had certain spots that you'd go. I mean, can you just give us an idea of how Kamloops contributed to your skating career and where you are today? You
know, growing up, we ended up getting the new skate park in MacArthur Island, I think when I was maybe 11 or 12. And then that park is incredible. It's a little beat up now, needs a bit of TLC, but for that period, it honestly was like being gifted the greatest training ground. And then at the time too, you know, the skate scene was really healthy, and it still is that right now. But having guys like Derek Swaim and Stacey Gabriel, who are both actually pro skaters from Kamloops as well, as kind of mentors and older guys to me, it was a really good community and scene for me.
As far as the opportunities that this opens up going to the Olympics, I know your career and your income is a lot of competition prize money and sponsorship deals and being in videos. Yeah. And anyone who goes to the Olympics, they can see a boost financially in those opportunities. And especially I was thinking, this is the first time that Canada's sending skateboarders to the Olympics and you're going. I mean, how much opportunity can this open up for you?
Yeah, I mean, I really, so far it's been great, and it's been extremely supportive through, you know, I have support through RBC, their Olympians program, and General Mills. I couldn't even believe it, but they decided to put me on my favorite cereal, Cinnamon Toast Crunch. So you can find that in the local grocery store. But yeah, it's been very life-changing in a lot of ways. And it's funny because going into it, I was like, well, I'll just skate and see what happens, you know? And so I have no idea where it can end up, but I'm just focusing on what I like to do the most, and that's skate.
Well, we here at Kamloops Last Week are sponsored by, while we're doing plugs, Holmes is where the heart is matchmaking. Do you have a girlfriend?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so you're off the market.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on that one.
Do you, did she get to go to Tokyo with you? And have you started switching to the mindset of, you know, the lead up to the games and getting settled in there and everything?
Yeah, no, I definitely have a whole plan to prepare leading into that. But it's going to be very bizarre in the sense that, you know, we're going to have no Canadian fans, and I'm not able to bring any family members or loved ones. And so it's just really going to be, Team Canada showing up, and, really hope that all of the people who are, genuine supporters in Canada find a way to support online or whatever. Cause it's, from my understanding, there isn't going to be many people in the crowd. So it's going to be interesting.
Do you have an opening ceremony?
We do, but I actually don't even know if I'll be a part of it. I haven't gotten a lot of details yet, but if it's happening, I definitely obviously hope we can walk with that. And it's funny, actually. So a buddy of mine I went to high school with in elementary school, Isaac Kaay, he's from Kamloops, and he plays for the rugby sevens team. And you know Isaac?
I interviewed him today. Yeah, I've interviewed him a few times.
Oh, wicked. Yeah, that's like my brother. Like, I've known him for years.
No way.
Yeah. No, we were really good friends. I met him in elementary school, and then we were buddies all throughout high school. Still talk all the time. And so, yeah, we keep talking in hopes that we can do the opening ceremonies and cruise together. But I don't know if COVID is going to allow it. But either way, it's pretty cool knowing that I think Isaac's going to be on the way too, and we both grew up together.
That's nuts, because for this show, I'm having you guys both on, and I had no idea that you guys were buddies. I talked to him yesterday, and I don't know if he's just playing coy, but his big decision day is this Monday coming up. Like, they have their final team selection. He's been injured. But I think he's got a pretty good chance of going. I mean, do you go to Inside Scoop there? What's he telling you? Is he going to go, or what?
That's kind of what he gave me an answer wise as well. It was like, I was like, you're coming, right? And he's like, yeah, the decision's almost there. And so I think he's just waiting until everything's confirmed. It's like, job's not done until it's all set in stone. And so, yeah, I'll definitely be messaging him on Monday to find out, because, yeah, 2 Kamloops kids, pretty cool.
All right, Chris, so you read the story, you saw the interview. What did you think about Matt?
I think it's pretty cool. It's something that is new to the Olympic sports, newish. And my stepdaughter, Isabel, shout out to her. She loves to skateboard. Her father takes her to the and her mom takes her to the skateboard park on Mac Island. And the amount of kids, when I go there with them, the amount of kids, the young kids, just doing amazing things is incredible. And I think this is part of the reason, because of mentors like this.
Right, and it's kind of cool. He's talking about his friend Isaac Kaay. They grew up together, and they could both be at the Olympics together. I wanted to ask you, what's the most anxious you've ever been waiting for something? Is there anything?
Well, I think it was just 3 weeks ago today when I had to have a colonoscopy. It was pretty anxious waiting for it. But I tell you, once they give you that drip, boy, you want one every week. But other than that, no, I've never had an anxious moment at the level that these people have. And if I go golfing, I'm anxious at the tee, and I always screw it up because I don't have that mental fortitude that these people do. I can't imagine doing what he did in Rome with all those people and what's on the line. It's incredible.
I actually picked Chris up from the hospital after that colonoscopy, and he showed me a picture I never want to see again. Yes, you mentioned it though, Isaac Kaay. He's anxious right now, and for great reason. This coming Monday, we find out if he makes the Canada Rugby Sevens team. He's been with that team for 5 years. He's been a stalwart. He hasn't missed a Rugby Sevens start since 2017. But of course, this January, he bangs up his knee pretty bad, and at the worst possible times. He's been fighting to get back in the lineup. He's missed a big chance to impress in Dubai in exhibition matches, but he is among the 17 players that are eligible. Only 13 will go, and I talked to Isaac about how nervous he is waiting for that decision to happen.
It's a funny thing, because a lot of guys who probably never stressed about a selection before are stressing. So, yeah, it's quite nerve-wracking. Me, myself, I'm kind of looking forward to getting that day over with, whether I make the team or not. It's just like a lot of guys are like, why can't we just find out today? So we got to wait another week, and fingers crossed I get a good phone call and book my trip. But other than that, yeah, it's nerve-wracking.
But how badly do you want to go? I mean, now that it's to the point where it's Monday coming up here, like, how badly do you want to make this team and go?
It's so funny, because I don't know how it'll feel if I don't make it, or if I do. Like, I just don't know what that'll feel like. Yeah, when you work towards something for 5 years straight, It's kind of hard to put into words. I don't know. I'll probably cry, to be honest with you. I would give probably anything to go at this point. Give up a lot to go. So, we give up a lot already just to even train and, put your name out there. So to actually get your name picked is, give almost anything at this point.
Chris, any thoughts on Isaac?
I think that it's, again, incredible. At this level, too, you're doing it for the love of the game. You're not getting paid big bucks to do this, and you're sacrificing a lot, family time, friend time, work time, to do. This is pure sport. This is what the Olympics is all about, right? It's amateur. It's your own dime. It's your own time. And I think he's going to be chosen.
These guys are essentially playing for peanuts. They're playing for the love of the game. A lot of them have put their professional lives on hold, some of them for almost 10 years. The team's had a lot of drama. They had a labor dispute with Rugby Canada in 2018, a fired coach in 2019, and Isaac's been trying to impress the new coach, which is tough to do when he's been injured. You can catch the full interviews. We talked to Isaac and Matt. You can find them on our YouTube page, Kamloops Last Week. Join the Last Week clique. Subscribe if you can. We're also full go on all podcast major providers, but for now, we're going to ask you to come with us as we go above the folds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Chris, last time we were on, we asked our audience for suggestions for who would they like to hear from our First Nations community, and they come up with a really good guest.
We are going to be speaking today to Nathan Matthew, and he's the chancellor at TRU since 2017. He's also the former chief of the Simpcw First Nation by Berger for more than 20 years. He's a long-time advocate for Aboriginal education in BC. He was executive director of Aboriginal education at TRU until 2014. He was the founding member of School District 73's First Nation Education Council, and he's been a long-time proponent of self-determination in Aboriginal education and promoting First Nations rights.
How do you feel like the follow-up's been since all this terrible news broke? Has the media stayed with it enough, do you think? Are we doing enough to make sure we keep shining a light on this? And is the appetite for people to help still there as strongly? I
think it is. You have that kid running the fundraising runs. There's more than a few of them. There's the truck rally. I think a story like this is going to get a lot of attention. The only danger is that it gets too much attention. People get burned out by news generally, right? Issues go into something else comes up. But this, I think we're doing what we can and what we need to do. But we have, again, like you said before, we have to take the lead from the Kamloops and the First Nations. Don't be sensational. Today there's another press conference on the 16th, and they'll update us on what's happening over there. So it's just basically take the lead and try to educate people.
You were talking about Brock Fraser, he's doing that run, 215 kilometers over 2 weeks. Indigenous man from Lillooet, now lives in Kamloops. He started with the goal of raising $1,000. He's at $53,000 and still growing right now. Maybe we can ask Nathan about that. Looking forward to talking to him in our next segment, which of course is called Last Week, This Week.
We have you on today to talk about a few things, and the first would be the terrible news, I guess you'd say historic news from to Kamloops in May 27th. It's been 3 weeks now since the news of the discovery of the remains of the children came out, and I'd like to know from your perspective, in those 3 weeks, initially it's a lot of shock, it's a lot of emotion. 3 weeks have gone by. It's not a long time, but it's quite a long time in the scheme of the news cycle. How have you seen the reaction, and more importantly, how has your view of the government's reaction to this been?
Well, the reaction, I think everyone it's quite similar. It was a very shocking news. And I think just about everyone said that we heard about it, but you never really got into any details. And so this was real evidence, and a lot more evidence than I thought. I always thought there might be a half a dozen or so, but 215, you can't ignore that number.
No.
So yeah, that shock, and then anger, truly just how did this happen? And knowing that that the institution was there for so long, and when you kids died, and kids were sent home when they were sick, and they died at home, and there was all that, and of course there was responding to media, of course, in terms of reaction and dialogue, and within communities. I know in Chuchua we had community discussions about it. We had the staff, we had professional counselors standing by to assist with the reaction, the emotional impact on people, because it's very real.
Yeah.
That whole carrying around a lot of stuff as First Nations, and I think some of it is fairly latent.
Yeah.
We learn how to deal with it in some fashions, and a lot of people, you don't know why you don't have this self-esteem positive. You don't really know why you engage in destructive behavior, and virtually all of us lost language.
Yeah.
And but it brings all of that part of the history back, where the residential school was realizing it was just a piece of a very purposeful policy that the federal government had to really eliminate all aspects of culture for First Nations people, and that whole cultural genocide that went on for so long. So turning to getting to the bottom of it, getting to the truth of the matter. Who were these kids? When were they buried? Who directed that whole effort? And where did the kids come from?
Yeah, are they documented? Yeah, exactly.
We still don't have, they're undocumented. And that is a piece of the situation that's really important in terms to effectively deal with it without knowing who they were and where they're from. And so I think that's a large amount of energy is being put into that in terms of other residential schools. I know in the Williams Lake area, they're doing the same thing. They're using the same technology to look for bodies.
Right.
And in some residential schools, they did have burial. They had cemeteries there. We know that the children died and they were buried there. A lot of the kids came from a very long ways away, so it was very difficult too.
And it was a time of a lot of diseases, a lot of maladies. They knew kids were going to die tragically, but those what you're mentioning were planned cemeteries, recorded, documented. What we're talking about here, as far as we know, is undocumented, which makes it all the more questionable.
That's right. And so the part of that telling the truth or finding out what the truth of it is where, so the attention shifts to Canada. They were the government that was responsible, and they carried out this purposeful activity. And the religious organizations also, they provided the moral authority for the government to do this sort of stuff, and they actually carried it out. The priests and the sisters, and so there's an attention shifting to that, and of course the big question is that are you going to hand over and be transparent about the kind of information that you do have about these children? And I think that would go a long ways in terms of allowing First Nations to deal with it effectively. And now the government is saying, well, everything is going to be led by First Nations. Well, not only led by First Nations, but it should be fully supported by the federal government.
Yes.
So they're saying, you hear the commitment by the government to do these things, but there's still the church and I guess the Pope, I haven't looked at the news today, but the Pope hasn't said much.
He
thinks it's a bad situation.
He says there's sorrowful and sympathy, but he hasn't yet apologized. I think everybody below him has apologized over the years, but he hasn't yet, and that's the big. He's the head of the religion, so that's the big argument there. Speaking of the government, I just want to get to this here. The government has committed to doing this, but they've committed to a lot of things before and haven't followed through completely, even in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, recommendations. You're an educator. How would you grade the federal government's response to this right now, if you had to?
Incomplete. Yeah, that's probably the best way to put it. And there's it's like handing your assignments in late. You still have some things to do because under the Truth and Reconciliation Commission recommendations and the acceptance by that of the federal government, they've done some things, but again, the grading would be saying, boy, when are you actually going to do it? We really have a good challenge to continue to develop the well-being of our communities, of our members and membership, and to gain strength. And a lot of that's going to be through education, how we educate ourselves about ourselves and our history, and what we're going to do to strengthen that the pieces of ourselves, I think, that were really negatively affected by things like the residential school, because they did a really good job of this eradication of culture in terms of, when my parents came home, they didn't speak the Sakwa or our language to us. It was lost. Yeah. All they had to do was speak. They were fluent, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And it was like that, I think, everywhere. And a lot of us grew up not feeling good, feeling a little bit ashamed about being a First Nations person, because it wasn't only sort of beat out of us, but the society around us, it has been filled with discrimination, racism, the laws, and the lack of recognition of any value of First Nations people in terms of contributions, making a positive contributions to the bigger world, and to contributions to ourselves of being independent. The notion was that we become non-First Nations and sort of join in the lower ranks of the larger society. That was the big plan. So yeah, we've got a bit of territory to make up. One of the really positive things, the resilience of First Nations people. After all that we've gone through, we're still here with a sense of self and identity, and we've been able to keep ourselves together. Our elders have sort of led the way and kept the pieces in place, although somewhat in a fragmented manner sometimes. But it's there for First Nations to work with, and I think that our leadership are doing a good job, and the communities in terms of education, healthcare, social development, we've been making very positive strides to look after ourselves and to gain that strength that we know is really necessary.
Nathan, you talked earlier about the stages, shock and anger. What stage are you in right now?
Well, I'm more determined than ever to support the current relationship where there's a clear commitment by the federal government, provincial government, and a whole lot of government agencies and bodies that say they're going to implement the terms, the articles of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And that's what I intend to put a lot of effort into.
Nathan, you were the administrator of the Kamloops Indian Residential School in the early 70s after the federal government took over control from the Catholic order that ran it since 1890. up until 69, the students there, stayed overnight, attended school there. A lot of the abuses happened there. When the federal government took it over in 69, they no longer attended classes there, but they went to area schools. Did they also stay there overnight? Were they still lodged there when you were administrator?
Yes, I came there a couple of years after they integrated the kids into the public schools in Kamloops and the private schools. There were a couple of Catholic schools, St. Anne's and OLPH, that the kids went to.
Right.
So, yeah, they went to the public schools during the day. They were picked up with buses and then brought back to the residence in the evening. And so they lived at the residence. And there may have been still a few kids that came in from the Kamloops to Kamloops Indian Band, and they came in they were day scholars. They were there just for the day and were returned home in the evening or in the afternoon. So
okay. So when you were administering it in the early 70s, how was it different from when it was under the control of the missionary oblates of the Mary Immaculate?
Well, the chiefs got together and started talking about the Indian residential school system, and they wanted to change it to make it a more positive place for the children. And so they decided they wanted someone, a First Nations person, to run it, and that's where I came in. I was asked if I was interested, and I said yes, I was, and pretty soon I was there as the administrator. So, yeah, I was involved with a couple of things, changes, and one of them was food. The food that the kids ate was not the best quality. I think institutionally it's difficult to provide, wonderful nutrition and stuff. But what was obvious is that the food that the staff were eating and the stuff that the kids are eating were really different, and the staff were eating really, really well, and the kids weren't. So the kids would be having mush in the morning, and the staff would have, bacon and eggs.
Right.
The staff would be having, I think there was a steak night, and the kids would be having macaroni and ground beef or something. Yeah. So it was like that. And so that's one of the first things I did, was to make sure that the kids and the staff ate the same food. More of a choice of the clothes they wore, because a lot of it, especially in the past, was really institutional. Everybody was sort of a uniform. Yeah. So it really made a difference to the teenagers who were teenagers going to public schools, and it was.
Yeah, you want to fit in and
just
everything,
right?
Just
like today, everybody's very aware of what the fashion was.
That's right.
So, yeah, and keeping the kids a lot of recreation, and putting some more culture into the activities, and getting the kids to really see the world and be out there, and a lot of trips to different parts of the province from with the different levels of kids that we had.
Okay. Nathan, any final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I think that the challenge for us as First Nations people and for non-First Nations people is to get on with the reconciliation part, is to deal with the past and to gain a better understanding of where we're coming from. If we really have the rights to self-determination, self-governance, if we really have a say, a right to have a say in how the lands and the resources within our territories can be put, then let's get on with that. I think that taking the minimalist view and always doing whatever costs the less and has the less impact on the non-First Nations community, if we carry that on, this process is going to take a long time, because the larger governments, the federal and provincial government, have incredible resources to protect their interests. And I think there has to be accommodation, level the playing field, and get on with it.
And maybe maybe they can improve their report card grade from incomplete to something better.
Well, or something like more promising.
Yeah.
All right, Nathan, we're going to give you an A today, and thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, have a good day.
You too.
Well, I love the show today. You lost an argument to me today. We had Matt Berger on, we had Isaac Kaay on, we had Nathan Matthew. Want to thank again Tara Holmes. Holmes is where the heart is, personalized matchmaking. Always want to thank Mike and Bonnie doing their thing, making us look good again. And we will see you last week.